Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today, where we'll be talking about serving on committees and the role of families and children and youth with special health care needs in improving the quality of our systems. We will have time at the end of the call for questions and answers, but please feel free to chat questions into our chat box, and I can try to respond to them as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm Carolyn Allshouse with Family Voices of Minnesota, and I'm going to be leading this webinar today, and we have a number of objectives that we're going to be going through. First of all, we want to provide a foundation about families serving as advisors and team members and help everyone understand why it's helpful to have families on committees and teams. Secondly, we hope to provide an understanding of what families can contribute to improving the quality and responsiveness of systems. And then third, we will be providing some tips and tools for families about how to be an effective member of an advisory committee or work group or team. So let me just tell you briefly about Family Voices of Minnesota and our Connected Parent-to-Parent Peer Support Program. Our program connects parents with veteran parents who have a child with similar needs or experiences, and those parents have gone through a very specialized training to be able to provide that support in an effective way. Secondly, we provide information and assistance to help families get the needed services and supports, including financial, healthcare, educational, and community life. We also offer emotional support that we hope provides understanding and acceptance so parents do not feel alone. And we offer encouragement and education to support parents in speaking up for their child, and like this webinar today, to be able to serve on committees and make changes and improvements to the healthcare system. So Family Voices of Minnesota is the state affiliate organization for Family Voices National. There are Family Voices organizations around the country and in almost every state. We are also the state alliance member for Parent-to-Parent USA, so we follow some very specific best practice guidelines in how we provide parent-to-parent support for families. So the foundation of having families participate in committees and work groups and quality improvement teams is really based in the whole idea of patient and family-centered care. Patient and family-centered care is an approach to the planning, delivery, and evaluation of healthcare that's grounded in mutually beneficial partnerships among healthcare providers, patients, and their families. So patient and family-centered care provides a framework for strategies to improve quality and safety and improving the experience of care. So as we're talking about the concepts of patient and family-centered care, I sometimes get the question, well, what do you mean by family? And what about grandparents raising their grandchildren, or foster families, or families who have adopted children? And I really like this definition of what is a family. Families are big, they're small, they're extended, they're nuclear, they're multi-generational, with one parent, two parents, grandparents. They live under one roof or many roofs. A family can be as temporary as a few weeks or as permanent as forever. We become part of a family by birth, adoption, marriage, or from a desire for mutual support. A family is a culture into itself with different values and a unique way of realizing our dream. Together, our families become the source for our rich cultural heritage and spiritual diversity. Our families create neighborhoods, communities, states, and nations. And I just really like that idea and wanted to present that as we're thinking about patient and family-centered care, and we're thinking about the families that we're talking about today in this webinar who may be serving on committees. So, families have unique expertise. When you have a parent who has a child or youth with special health care needs and disabilities, they have a unique perspective that providers and policymakers do not have and cannot have. They have the perspective of someone who's very close to the system, but not constrained by the traditions of the system or the organization or the agency that they work for. So families have the opportunity sometimes to be more creative in their thinking about how to improve systems, as well as how to make changes that maybe providers in those systems haven't thought about. The expertise and the experience that families bring to this work is unique and very important. It has an important value that we really need to be able to respect and understand. Families know how the system really works and not how it was designed to work. Families already know the system flaws and failures because they live with it every single day. And the reason that I bring that up is because very often we hear from people who are working in organizations or agencies that they want to try to get their ducks in a row before they invite families to be on a committee or to help with quality improvement work. And the reality is that the families already know the flaws. You don't have to wait until you get things what you think might be better, because families already know the flaws in the system. So the earlier that an agency or organization can get a family on board on a committee, the easier it's going to be to utilize that expertise that families can bring to the team. Families are resources. They're important resources that help providers know if changes that they're making are working or not working before you fully implement something in a system that maybe is hard to change. As I mentioned before, families can be resources for creative ideas to improve the system. Families can help professionals understand other systems and resources. So people who may be from the healthcare system may not understand the education system very well, or they may not understand the social service system very well. And families are really great at being able to help professionals understand how those other systems work and where they might be able to help in those other systems as well. Families often bring a unique expertise from their professional life, and oftentimes that unique professional experience that the family has can be utilized on a team as well. Also, families can be energizers for a team. Families are passionate about wanting to make the system better for their family and the next family that's going to come along. So hopefully the families that are participating on a team are those cheerleaders for the team and can be that positive approach to helping the whole team keep moving forward. So let's talk a little bit about collaboration. When you have a team of people working together, whether it's on a committee or a work group or a quality improvement project, it really requires the collaboration of all of the members of the team. And I really like this definition or idea of describing what collaboration means. It means that no one interest group is always right. It means taking what you think and what I think and what someone else thinks and coming up with something that works for everyone. And I think that this is an important thing for families to be aware of, an important concept for providers to be aware of. We have to all remember that when we're part of a committee, everyone who's coming to that committee brings a unique expertise, and that all of that expertise is important and valued and valuable. And it means that we have to find a way to bring that expertise together, utilize the expertise, and come up with a way of implementing something that can work for everyone. And sometimes parents, when they're part of a committee, may come to that committee thinking, everything has to be done the way I think as a parent it should be done. So parents need to remember that that's not the case. This whole concept is about collaboration, taking what I think and what you think and coming up with something that works for everyone. So there are some important elements of collaboration that I think we can utilize and keep in mind. Collaboration requires mutual respect for everyone's skills and knowledge. It also requires honest and clear communication. Oftentimes that falls on the role of whoever's leading the committee or the work group, but it also is a requirement of everyone who's on that team that they have to make a commitment to have honest and clear communication with each other. It requires understanding, and it also requires empathy. It often will require mutually agreed upon goals. When you come together on a committee or a work group, there should be some specific goals that the team is agreeing to that you're going to be working on. It requires that shared planning and decision-making takes place in that committee. Open and two-way sharing of information. So all the members of the committee need to be able to have the same information and in a timely way. It requires accessibility and responsiveness. It requires evaluating the progress together so that we all know that we're making some progress. And collaboration really requires that we do not label or blame other members of the committee. There are barriers to collaboration that can occur. Attitudes and perceptions about each other can be a barrier and need to be thought about in advance. If an agency or an organization is requiring a certain committee and they're requiring a certain membership of that committee that not everybody agrees about, there could be some attitudes or perceptions that are occurring before that committee even gets formed. So we need to eliminate those issues that create barriers to collaborating. Sometimes barriers can be past experiences, and this can be true for families who are coming into a committee. You may have been on a different committee and had a really negative experience where maybe you weren't listened to or your ideas were rejected. And so you're coming to a new committee with those past experiences as kind of baggage. You have to put those behind us and go forward with a positive attitude. Cultural differences may be a barrier to collaboration, and those should be discussed and addressed. There may be socioeconomic and educational influences that also can create barriers, may make it difficult for people to attend meetings or to be able to understand all of the material that's being presented at a committee meeting. So we need to be able to check in about people's understanding and where they might need support. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that. There may be just some lack of skills for how to collaborate and how to communicate effectively. That can be a barrier. There may be a lack of really logistical and administrative support for a committee or a work group that may make it very difficult to collaborate effectively. And that's something that the people who are leading the committee need to be aware of and address if they do have problems with having the support they need to effectively have a committee be a positive experience and accomplish the goals. People coming to committees may be coming to that committee with different purposes or different agendas that may not be really articulated very well. And that can really be a barrier if I'm coming into a committee with one idea or an agenda based on some other previous experience that may not be part of what this committee is addressing. That can really be a barrier. So it's up to me as a committee member to be fully aware of the purpose of the committee, what the agenda and goals of the committee are, so that I can come to it and be able to collaborate. So here's an example of what a committee of patients and families might be able to do. So before the committee, the sign in the clinic waiting room said, "Diabetics, take off your shoes." But with the suggestion of patients, the poster was changed to, "Diabetics, show off your feet." Sometimes the very simplest of approaches and opportunities to learn from patients and families can make a big difference to how the system is received by other patients and other families. So when you're given the opportunity to serve on a committee, there are some things that I think will be very important for you to keep in mind. Start with your own experience. Share your thoughts and information about your experience in ways that other people can learn from. Sometimes families have negative experiences, and it's okay to share negative experiences, but we always have to follow it up with what would have made that experience better, so that we're helping the other people who are part of that committee or group really learn from your story. Your story is powerful, but we have to find positive ways to share that experience so other people can learn. And we have to do it in a way that's brief and is important to the specific topic or the conversation at hand. As a family member, it's not going to be helpful to have a 10 or 15-minute story about an experience that you had in an hour-long meeting. We have to look for ways to share our stories in a brief way that really shares the experience and helps people understand how we can make the experience better the next time. So when we're participating in a committee, we really have a responsibility as parents and family members to learn who the people and the programs are that are participating in this committee and what they do. We need to make sure that we are clear and ask for clarification when needed. Don't be afraid to say, I don't understand, if you don't understand something. I know that can be very intimidating as a parent, especially in a group where there's multiple people, to say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. But if we don't, we're going to go through that entire meeting with either a lack of understanding or a misunderstanding about what the topic is or what the issues are. So it's very important to say, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand, and ask for clarification. It's important for the family to really develop the big picture. It's important to educate yourself about the issues that concern all of the people that are affected by whatever the service system is that you're discussing. You have to be able to see beyond your own personal experiences in order to represent the needs of other families who may have had different experiences than you've had. Oftentimes on committees or work groups, one or two families get invited. If you're the only family that's been invited to participate in a committee, request that at least one or two other families also participate. So that's something you should be asking the committee about, number one. Number two, as a member of the committee who's representing other families, it's very important that you take the time to look beyond your own personal experience and learn from other families. And you can do that in a number of ways. Participate in family networking groups. So look for those opportunities. Connect with organizations like Family Voices to be able to connect with other families. Ask to see family satisfaction surveys. If the committee that you're involved with is in an organization or an agency that does some sort of family satisfaction surveys, ask to see that data. Learn about what other families are saying about that agency or that organization. Ask to see if there's any state or national data on the topic that you're talking about. Look for opportunities to attend family conferences. Family Voices of Minnesota had a statewide conference this past May in which we had the opportunity to present a number of really great topics with a number of great speakers. That kind of conference is a wonderful opportunity for a family to learn more about what's going on in all of the different systems and how they can better understand the needs of other families. Share the spotlight. As I mentioned before, suggest that other families participate in the activity that's going on that you're part of. Provide encouragement and support to the other families that are participating. You may want to meet with them before or after the meeting to talk about what happened at the meeting and see if there's any areas that either one of the parents or any of the parents attending might need more clarification about. So providing this kind of extra support is really helpful for families who may typically not be usually represented, such as families who are new to this country or new to the state, and families for whom English is a second language. So many times parents are asked to be on committees but don't have a lot of experience doing it. They may not have had the opportunity to listen to a webinar like this, and you may be able to provide some support to that family to help them feel more comfortable serving on the committee and understanding what's going on in that committee. Another thing that is really important when you're entering into a committee like this, or any of the committees that you may be asked to be part of, is assume the best about people, build bridges, respect the perspectives that others bring, work in partnership, in collaboration with others, and keep an open mind and an open heart. If you remember at the beginning, I talked a little bit about the fact that we need to have empathy as people who are serving on a committee and working together, and that's really important. You also can let your needs be known. Ask for more orientation. This may be something that you may want to do before a committee, you're starting on a new committee, or it may be after the first meeting when maybe you realize that you need more information. You may want to ask the people who are leading the committee or the team if they can help you with a little better orientation to whatever it is, if it's part of the state system or if it's a particular topic. Again, if there's a word or a phrase that's used and you don't know what it means, find out. You can always write it down and ask later, or you can ask the person next to you. But don't go through participating in a whole committee and not really have a good understanding of whatever the topic is that's being focused on. If meetings end up getting scheduled at times that are totally inconvenient for you, ask about other options for times. Find out if the committee could change the time to a time that may be better for you, or ask about participating by phone or maybe even video conferencing. Identify who the leaders on the team are and ask if there's an opportunity for reimbursement for expenses. Oftentimes, parents are the only people on a committee or a team who are not being paid to be there. And so it's okay to ask for reimbursement and help with the expenses that you have. And I would ask if they offer any type of a stipend. It's something that you can ask the team leader and encourage them to look to see if there's an opportunity to help with those kinds of expenses that you may have. And you may want to point out that you're the only one there who's not being paid. So one of the things that I like to encourage families to think about is think of themselves as colleagues on this team or this committee. And in order to be thought of as a colleague, there are some important things that you need to do as a member of the committee and to gain the respect that you deserve. One of the things is to always follow through. If you say you're going to do something, take it seriously, meet the deadline, and follow through. If for some reason you can't, let the team know when it will be done and when you'll be able to follow through. Make sure that you're prepared for every meeting. Read all of the material that's sent out in advance. Review the agenda in advance. And if you need to, do your own research on topics that might be in the agenda. For example, if there is a topic on the agenda related to something very specific, for example, if on the agenda they're going to be talking about a specific waiver program, and maybe your child is part of that waiver program, and that's why you were invited to be on the committee. But I would spend some time talking to other parents whose children are also on the waiver program and find out what their experience is. Do some research, learn about the topic, and get a broader perspective before that first meeting or before any of the meetings that you go to. If direction from the team is vague, ask for specifics. Ask the questions about what's going to happen and what's expected, or what any of the specifics are about that topic or that meeting. It's also really helpful to participate in discussions actively and with confidence. And when you can, and when it seems like the right time, take the lead. Use your expertise. Sometimes on committees, it's helpful to rotate being the lead of the committee for that particular meeting, or to be the note taker or the timekeeper, or help to set the agenda. As a parent coming into the committee, you don't have to sit back and be inactive in helping with the actual participation or the actual functioning of that committee. You can participate as the timekeeper, the note taker, the sending out the agenda to other members, sending out the meeting minutes, following up on certain discussions. So you want to be an active participant in the committee. Always remember that your voice is a necessary voice for change. So don't ever just call yourself a parent. You're a team member who has expertise and experience that has equal value to everyone else who's on that team or on that committee. And there's nothing just about the kind of parent that you are. And I think that's something very important to keep in mind. So I've covered a lot of material today, and I'd like to open up the phone lines. And,
the conference has been unmuted.
And find out if there are any questions or any comments from those who are participating in the webinar today. Are there experiences that you've had as a member of a committee that was really great that you would like to share with any of the other parents who may be listening to this webinar?
Hi, Carolyn. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
There have been times when I've attended certain advisory groups or meetings, and it feels like the agenda and everything's been predetermined before any of the parents, families, or stakeholders even really get much of a chance to weigh in. How would you advise that when we encounter that we can take a positive approach to being more involved in that process before we come to the table?
Well, that's a very good question, and that I think happens quite a lot, and it happens for a few different reasons. It often happens because maybe a committee is formed because of a specific purpose or a specific need that's been already determined by the agency or organization that's forming the committee. Sometimes the committee is being formed as a result of a funding purpose. So they may be asked to form an advisory committee for the purposes of a grant or some other kind of funding. So oftentimes those committees then end up being the purpose of the committee or the goals of the committee are sort of predetermined before any parents are even identified to be part of it. So I think one of the ways of handling that is to make sure that you're asking for really good clarification about what the purpose of the committee is and what the goals of the committee are. And then I think it's okay to ask the question, is there flexibility in those goals that maybe we can participate in improving or realigning a little bit? Most of the time, I would say if it's approached in a positive way, that people will be open to that idea. Or you may approach it in the way of saying, once we accomplish these goals, would it be possible for us as a committee to address some additional goals that may need to be addressed or that the parents in the group feel would be helpful to talk about? So it may be addressing the needs of the organization or agency first, and then asking if, as a group, you can identify additional goals and needs that can be addressed. Do you think that that would be a helpful way to approach those kinds of issues?
Absolutely. That's really, really helpful. And I can already think of 2 different instances where I am involved and I was feeling frustrated, and those suggestions are absolutely perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
What other questions or comments or experiences have others that are participating on the call today have had?
Well, this is Terry. I personally haven't been really involved in any conferences or committees, but I have one coming up, so that's why this was very helpful to me to know how to kind of approach things. And a lot of it's, just common sense, but it's nice to kind of have it formatted out there. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. Was there anything that I brought up today that you hadn't thought about?
I did have a comment, and of course I didn't write it down. But the whole collaborative stuff, that was kind of a good perspective to remember that, we're all there for the good. Nobody's really there, hopefully, anyway, nobody's really there to, cut people down or try to be the powerful one. But, yeah, nothing comes to mind right now, but it just, in all, was very helpful information.
Great.
One thing that that you mentioned, I've actually tried before or done was, it's kind of intimidating to sit in a room knowing that, everybody else is probably receiving, or they're as part of their job, so they're kind of on the clock, or it's part of their salary, they're being reimbursed. And what I've found really helpful when I do bring it up in the group is maybe not so much to say, hey, by the way, I'm not the only one getting paid here, but to take it in that positive approach that you mentioned and explain to my colleagues that, while this may be part of their normal workday, what it takes for someone who has a child with special needs to actually attend and participate in these opportunities is sometimes very challenging and can be very complex. And I've always had that received really well, and it really actually, I think, created a better environment in the group, in that people understood me and felt that I brought a lot of valuable things to the group as well.
That's a really good point. And, I think it's not at all uncommon for organizations who are forming committees to not think about it, to not really think about the fact that they've invited a parent or a couple of parents to come to this group, and that everyone else is being paid, but the parent is not being paid. It's not out of maliciousness often. It's really just not something that they've even considered. And oftentimes there can be financial barriers that may make it difficult for the organization to provide a stipend or reimbursement, but oftentimes they may be able to find a way to do it. If you talk about it as an issue, and I think, as you mentioned, Tricia, to be able to bring it up in a positive way can really be helpful. And even if they can't, there's no way that they can do it this time, maybe it will be an opportunity for them to think about putting it in the budget the next time, or in the next year's budget. There may be an opportunity to include it. One of the other things, in all honesty, that can be a barrier is that there are going to be some organizations and some agencies that will have great difficulty paying a parent directly to be part of a committee. And I'll give you an example. A lot of times healthcare organizations have a very difficult time writing a check to a parent for a stipend, because the only people that they provide checks to are employees, and they don't have a real system in place to be able to do it. And so there are those organization or system barriers that make it impossible for them to be able to write a check and pay a parent. But what they can do, and we've seen this happen, is they can develop a contract with an organization like Family Voices of Minnesota, and have Family Voices of Minnesota pay the parents who are serving on that committee. And so there are ways around organizational barriers that can be overcome with creativity.
The one thing that I also have found to be true, the more I participate and can bring something to the group and speak up, I've felt that the advisory group quite often will then see me as a valuable part of that group and equal, and they'll encourage other family participants to engage as well. And so it's almost like, in a sense, proving your worth or proving your value, but to make sure, I think, that you do speak up when you are a part of these things and let people know what you're thinking. It's really important.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It is important, and you may be that parent who is able to show what the value is of having the parents on the committee, and encouraging them to include other parents, I think, is something that we can all do, so that we're not in that position of being the only parent on the committee, which often happens. And sometimes it feels a little bit like tokenism when that happens. It's like, well, we've got our parents, so we can check that box off. And not always realizing or recognizing the important contributions that parents make and the value of having multiple parents on a committee. I think ideally, I would say the minimum number of parents to serve on a committee should be 2, and it would be better if it's more than that. And in fact, working with a project with Family Voices National, in which we're talking about making a recommendation about a percentage of parents on a committee, that it should be a minimum of 25% should be parents on a committee. That can be hard to do if it's a small committee, but it's just, I think, something to give some thought to. And when you are invited to be on a committee as a parent, and you may be the only one, or there may be two, to encourage more parents to be able to be involved or invited to be on the committee, and then really think about how you can support those other parents. Other questions or comments? Well, I want to thank you all for being part of the webinar today. Please feel free to contact me at any time if there is additional information that I can provide or resources that would be helpful. I am able to be reached by my email, which is carolyn@familyvoicesmn.org. And please feel free to contact Family Voices for any additional support or information that we can provide as an organization. Thanks again, everyone, for being on this call today.